Daf Yomi, Tractate Kiddushin, Daf 77b. Aren't they separate bodies? In other words, three different people. Aren't they labels, shemot, of separate muchlakim, prohibitions? Since each one is forbidden in her own right, it is therefore clear that he should receive lashes for each act. Rather, perhaps it means that he engaged in 3 acts of intercourse with one widow. The Gemara analyzes this possibility. What are the circumstances? If they did not forewarn him between each act, it is obvious that he is liable to receive only one set of lashes, for one must be forewarned in order to be liable to receive lashes, and here he was forewarned only once for the 3 acts. There would be no need to state this halacha. Rather, perhaps the case is they forewarned him for each and every one of his acts of intercourse. But if that were the case, why is he liable to receive only one set of lashes? But didn't we learn in a Mishnah, Nazir 42a, a Nazirite who was drinking wine in violation of his Naziriteship, the entire day is liable to receive only one set of lashes. If they said to him, do not drink, in other words, he was forewarned several times, and he nevertheless drinks, he is liable to receive lashes for each and every time he was forewarned and proceeded to drink. The Gemara answers, no, it is necessary for a case where he engaged in sexual intercourse one time with Reuven's widow, who was previously Shimon's widow, who was previously Levi's widow. Lest you say they are separate labels of prohibitions, and he should be liable to receive 3 sets of lashes, since she was widowed from 3 different people. The Brisa therefore teaches us that we require separate bodies for him to receive separate punishments, and that is not the case here. And as that is not the case here, he is liable to receive only one set of lashes. The Brisa teaches that if a high priest engages in sexual intercourse with a woman who was a widow, then was a divorcee, then a halalah, then was a zona, if the changes to her status occurred in that order, he is liable to receive lashes for each of them. The Gemara asks, what does this Tana hold? If he holds that a prohibition takes effect where another prohibition already exists, in other words, if an item or a person is rendered forbidden by a prohibition, then another prohibition can take effect. In addition to the first one, the reverse should also be the case. In other words, if she was initially a zona and subsequently became a halalah, the same 2 prohibitions should apply to her. And if he holds that a prohibition does not take effect where another prohibition already exists, he should likewise not be liable to receive more than 1 set of lashes, even if they occurred in this order. Rava said, in general, this Tana does not accept the principle that a prohibition takes effect where another prohibition already exists, but he holds that it does take effect in the case of an expanded prohibition. In the second prohibition, if the second prohibition adds people to the category of those to whom the item is forbidden, then it takes effect in addition to the previous prohibition, which had a more limited range. Isser Mosif. Chal Isser Chal al Isser. In the case of a widow, in this case, a widow forbidden to a high priest, but is permitted to a common priest, once she becomes a divorcee, since a prohibition has been added to her with regard to a common priest, as the common priest is prohibited from marrying a divorcee, the prohibition is also added to her with regard to a high priest. And at this stage, she is still permitted to partake of truma, if she is the daughter of a priest. When she becomes a halalah by engaging in sexual intercourse with a priest, since a prohibition for her to eat truma has been added, the prohibition with regard to a halalah is also added with regard to a high priest who engages in intercourse with her, in addition to the prohibitions of a widow and a divorcee. It is only if they occurred in this order that each prohibition adds to the previous one. But if not, they happened in the reverse order. Yet, one could ask, but in the case of a zona, what expanded prohibition is there with regard to her? There is no additional prohibition with a zona beyond what is prohibited with regard to a halalah. Rav Chana bar Rav Katina said, since a label of znut disqualifies her in Israel, it is viewed as an expanded prohibition. Although a zona, as precisely defined in this context, in other words, a woman who engages in sexual intercourse with one who is unfit for her, is prohibited only to priests and does not add any prohibition beyond that of a halalah, the label of a zona in its broader sense, such as a married woman who commits adultery, does disqualify her to an Israelite, namely her husband. Therefore, there is a prohibition with regard to a zona that has a greater scope than the prohibition with regard to a halalah. A Tana taught in a Brisa before Rav Sheshet. The command addressed to the high priest states, a widow, one divorced, or a halalah or a zona, these shall he not take, but a virgin of his own people shall he take to wife. Leviticus 21:14. Any woman who is included in the mitzvah shall he take, is included in the prohibition shall he not take. If she becomes a widow or a divorcee, and any woman who is not included in the mitzvah shall he take is not included in the prohibition. Shall he not take, this includes the case of a high priest who engaged in intercourse with his widowed sister. As his sister, she is forbidden to him even when she is a virgin. So the mitzvah shall he take does not refer to her. Therefore, he does not transgress the prohibition shall he not take if he engages in intercourse with her after she had been widowed or divorced. Rav Sheshet said to him, he who said this to you, in accordance with whose opinion did he teach it? It is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, who says as a principle a prohibition does not take effect where another prohibition already exists. Isser chal al isser. Isser chal al isser, yeah. Therefore his sister, who is already forbidden to him by virtue of being a sister, is not forbidden due to the additional prohibition he shall not take. As it is taught in a Brisa, Rabbi Shimon says, one who eats unslaughtered animal carcass on Yom Kippur is exempt from karet, from eating on the fast days, since the prohibition against eating an animal carcass applied to it beforehand. As if you say, the Brisa follows the opinion of the rabbis. They don't say a prohibition takes effect where another prohibition already exists. No, a prohibition does take effect where another prohibition already exists. The Gemara rejects this. You can say that even the Brisa is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, as when the rabbis say a prohibition takes effect where another prohibition already exists. That statement applies only when the second prohibition is a more severe prohibition. For example, eating on Yom Kippur, which takes effect in addition to a light prohibition. In this case, eating an unslaughtered animal carcass. But a light prohibition does not take effect in addition to a severe prohibition. In this case, the prohibition by engaging in intercourse with one's sister, which is punishable by karet, is more severe than that of a widow or divorced, or a challah or a zona you shall not take, which is punishable by flogging. There are those who say that Rav Sheshet said to the Tana as follows. In accordance with those whose opinion is this? Is this accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, who say a prohibition takes effect where another prohibition already exists? Where and when the rabbis say that a prohibition takes effect where another prohibition already exists, that statement applies when the second prohibition is more severe prohibition, which takes effect in addition to a light prohibition, but a light prohibition does not take effect in addition to a severe prohibition. As if it is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. Now that he holds that even a severe prohibition does not take effect in addition to a light prohibition, it is necessary to say that a light prohibition does not take effect in addition to a severe prohibition. There would be no novelty in this ruling of the Brisa. The Gemara rejects this. It is necessary, lest you say that a prohibition involving the priesthood is different. You might say that since there are many stringencies that apply only to priests, then with regard to prohibitions of the priesthood, a second prohibition should take effect in addition to the first one. He therefore teaches us that Rabbi Shimon holds that the second prohibition does not take effect even when it is one addressed to members of the priesthood. Rav Papa said to Abaya, in the case of an Israelite who engages in intercourse with his sister, this makes her a zona, and she is forbidden to a priest. But does he also make her a halalah, so that a priest who engages in intercourse with her is also liable for violating the prohibition of engaging in intercourse with a halalah, or perhaps he does not make her a halalah? The two sides of the question are as follows. Do we say that this is an a fortiori inference, if she becomes a halalah by engaging in sexual intercourse for which she is liable for violating only an ordinary prohibition, should she not all the more so be considered a halalah by engaging in intercourse for which she is liable to be punished by karet? Or perhaps the status of halalah results only from a prohibition addressed specific to the priesthood. Abaye said to him, a prohibition with regard to halalah results only from a prohibition addressed specifically to the priesthood, and from that alone. Rava says, from where is this matter that the sages state that a halalah results only from a prohibition addressed specifically to the priesthood derived? As is taught in a Brisa, the verse need not explicitly state that divorcee is forbidden to a high priest, and one could derive it by means of an a fortiori inference from the halacha of a common priest. As I can state the following argument, now that a divorcee is forbidden to a common priest, it is necessary to state that she is forbidden to a high priest. But if it is not necessary to mention it, why is the prohibition with regard to divorcee to a high priest stated? It is in order to teach the following. Just as the prohibition with regard to divorcee is distinct from that of a zona and a halala, in the case of a common priest, a divorcee is forbidden by a separate prohibition for which he is liable to be flogged, so too the prohibition with regard to divorcee is distinct in the case of a high priest, and he will be liable to receive lashes for a separate prohibition if she is a halalah as well. Oh, we have some time here. About 2 minutes.